Okay, welcome to a presentation on sentence structure. This is specifically about how to avoid common problems, such as run-ons, comma splices, fragments. First, we have to know what is a sentence. A sentence is a group of words that contains a subject, which is the thing or the person that is doing something in a sentence, a verb, the action that's being done, and a complete thought. It has to stand on its own. All of those three things have to be present for a group of words punctuated as a sentence to be a sentence. So if you look at these examples, the girl ran quickly, the small girl ran home quickly, the small girl who was wearing a pink dress ran home to her parents very quickly despite the fact that she was injured. These are all complete sentences. We start with something very simple, the girl ran, and then we add an adverb describing how she ran. We add an adjective to describe the girl. We add other modifiers to describe things about the girl and where she's going and so on. But it all comes down to a subject, a verb, and a complete thought. So problems with sentence structure. The first one is a fragment, which is an incomplete sentence. Another word or phrase for a sentence is independent clause. That's because it is independent. It can stand on its own. So a fragment is a dependent clause. It needs something else to complete it, to make it be able to stand on its own. So it's missing a subject or a verb or a complete thought. It's missing something. So one of the easiest ways to find fragments is to read your paper backwards. That doesn't mean word by word, it means starting at the last sentence and then reading the sentence before it and reading the sentence before that. Reading out of sequence can make the incomplete and unconnected thoughts stand out so that you find them more easily. If you read it forward, your brain sort of fixes the problems in itself rather than noticing that there's a problem. The most common cause of a fragment is the use of a subordinating conjunction or a conditional word without connecting the dependent clause to a complete sentence. So conditional words are the words like because, if, when, while, before, until, and so on. These are the words that when you add them to a sentence, like I ran, when you say because I ran, it's no longer a complete thought. You've still got a subject and a verb, but it's no longer complete. It needs something else to make it complete. So you've got to be careful with these words. Not avoid them, but be careful with how you use them. Another cause of fragments is verbals, which act as conditional words. These are the ing words that make words like walking, running, eating, talking. They're not verbs on their own. They act as nouns, or they need a verb to make them complete. So I like running. Running is fun. She was running. Those are all complete thoughts, but only because they have subject and verbs, right? I like running. Running down the street, that's not complete. That's a fragment. It's missing a subject and a verb, or a complete thought. It's not all of those things. So it's a fragment. Correcting fragments, you have to add what's missing or connect the fragment to a complete sentence. That's another way you can do it. So here are some examples. Walking to the store is a fragment. It's incomplete. But I was walking to the store. You've added the subject and the verb. Now it's a complete sentence. Walking to the store, I fell down. You've got what's punctuated as two sentences, but the first one is a fragment, walking to the store. So connect them. Walking to the store, I fell down. Or turn it around. I fell down walking to the store. The only difference between those two examples is the punctuation. If the ing word or if the conditional word is at the beginning of the sentence, there's a comma in between the two sentences. If it's in the middle of the two sentences, you don't need the comma. Run-ons. Two or more sentences combined without a conjunction or proper punctuation. One of the first things I want to point out is that the label run-on has nothing to do with the length of the sentence. It doesn't mean a really long sentence. A fragment can be really long and a run-on can be really short, okay? So for example, I ran, I fell, punctuated the way it is here, that's two subjects, two verbs, two complete thoughts. It's a run-on, even though it's really short. Finding run-ons. Look for a new subject and verb in the middle of a sentence without any of the appropriate joining strategies we'll be discussing in the slides to come, or you can find the information on the content page. You correct them really simply. Separate with a period. I ran, I fell. Okay. The problem with separating with a period is that if that's the only way you fix run-ons, you end up with a whole lot of really short sentences and it sounds like a children's book. So you want to vary your ways of correcting things. You want to vary your ways of connecting sentences as much as possible so it doesn't sound like a children's book. Join with a coordinating conjunction. These are the fanboys, for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. I think that was all of them. I ran, comma, so I fell. You just have to remember that when you use one of these words to join two sentences, it comes with a comma. Join with a subordinating conjunction. These are the conditional words we already talked about. Because I ran, comma, I fell, or I fell because I ran. Notice the punctuation. Join an adverbial conjunction. I ran, semicolon, therefore, comma, I fell. These are the words that come with semicolons. Sometimes they're called transitional words. Therefore, however, nevertheless. Those are probably the ones you use most often. It's always semicolon, word, comma, and then the second sentence. Join with a semicolon alone if the sentences don't need a relationship word to make sense together. I ran, semicolon, I fell. Those two make sense that they're related, and it's pretty obvious how they're related. You couldn't say, I love pizza, semicolon, it's cold outside. Those two don't have anything to do with each other, so a semicolon wouldn't work. Notes about correcting run-ons. If you're correcting with a conjunction, you have to make sure that the words you choose has the relationship that you need it to convey. Notice how the following sentences change meaning. I ran and I fell. That means two things just happen to be happening at the same time. I ran, so I fell. The running caused the falling. I ran, but I fell. There's an opposition there. Somehow the falling stopped the running. While I ran, I fell. They're happening at the same time. So even though the subjects and verbs are the same, the conjunction word changes the meaning just slightly. So you have to make sure you're choosing the right relationship word. Moving on to comma splices. Two or more sentences combined with a comma. A comma is not strong enough to join sentences. So if you feel the urge to fix a run-on with a comma, it's not going to work. It just changes the problem from a run-on to a comma splice. In fact, a comma splice is a type of run-on. It's like a subcategory. It's a run-on with a comma in it. Okay. Finding comma splices is the same as finding run-ons, except it's a little easier because now when you're looking for that second subject and verb, you're looking for a comma and a new subject and a verb. So the comma often is the signal that you've got a problem. That doesn't mean that every comma in your paper signals that there's a comma splice. Only if a comma is followed by a new subject, verb, complete thought. The solutions are exactly the same. Separate with a period, join with a coordinating conjunction, join with a subordinating conjunction, join with an adverbial conjunction, join with a semicolon alone if it's appropriate. Then we have our final problem with sentence structure, and that is beginning with a prepositional phrase. You can start a sentence with a prepositional phrase, but a prepositional phrase can't be the subject of a sentence. So in something, on something, of something, with something, those can't do anything. In something can't do something, right? They can start a sentence, but then that means you need a subject and a verb following them. So to correct, you have to either remove the prepositional phrase or add a subject after the prepositional phrase and before the verb. Okay? Here are some examples because you're probably thinking you have no idea what I'm talking about. In an article from a Seattle newspaper stated that a study revealed that of gunshot deaths in a white urban county in Washington state, 53% took place in the home. In an article from a Seattle newspaper stated. In an article can't state. An article can state, but in an article can't. So, remove the prepositional phrase. An article from a Seattle newspaper stated that a study revealed, and so on. Or keep the prepositional phrase, but add a subject. In an article from a Seattle newspaper, a study revealed that gunshot deaths, and so on. So now we have a subject and a verb, and now it's a complete sentence. Let's look at another example. Over the 16-year survey of Cuyahoga County's accidental firearm fatalities, it showed that during 4 consecutive years, the number of deaths tripled the average rate of the first 10 years. The problem here is, what is it referring to? Over the 16-year survey, it showed. Well, over the 16-year survey can't be a subject, so it can't be an it. So take out the prepositional phrase. The 16-year survey of Cuyahoga County's accidental firearm fatalities showed. Now we've got a subject and a verb and a complete thought. In a pamphlet called It Could Happen to You by the National Rifle Association, it stated. That's the same problem. Take the prepositional phrase out. A pamphlet called It Could Happen to You by the National Rifle Association stated. Or, in a pamphlet called It Could Happen to You, the National Rifle Association stated. So now we have a subject doing the stating. One more example. When looking at the pros and cons of owning a gun, it tells me that a gun is not the right answer for protection. Again, there's nothing to be it because it's when looking at. So when looking at the pros and cons of owning a gun, I see that a gun is not the right answer for protection. Or the pros and cons of owning a gun tell me that a gun is not the right answer for protection. In this version, we've made this the subject and had the verb, tell. And in this one, we've kept the prepositional phrase and we've added a subject and a verb. That's a lot of information. Thank you for sticking around. And make sure you look at the content pages for more information and more examples to make it clearer.